Hello everyone and welcome to another community webinar. My name is Jan de Vries and I'm the Community Engagement Manager here at Mendix. My mission is to enable every maker to build better apps. With me today are Jeff Goldberg, Senior Platform Evangelist at Mendix, and Hedwig Doets, AR Developer at Mendix. So Jeff will take us on a tour de force of the evolution of user experiences, how this changes how developers create solutions, and how Mendix looks at AR and VR. Hedwig will draw back the curtain and give us a unique look behind the scenes of building an augmented reality demo and integration. All right, let's get started.
Thanks, Jan. Today I want to start our conversation with the concept of evolution. The second definition for evolution in the Google Dictionary is the gradual development of something, especially from a simple to a more complex form. Now, as I reflect on this definition, I'm struck by what we as low-code developers are able to accomplish. We use a platform that turns the complex into the simple, in clear defiance of this definition. And in this webinar, we're going to show you technology that is complex in and of itself. And through the power of Mendix, we're going to show you how we are developing ways to harness that complexity and break down the barriers for making apps and experiences. As a community, we're finding ourselves at the center of several experience evolutions. User experience is evolving beyond just making it work to human-centered and design thinking approaches to solving problems. Table stakes today involve experiences that do more than work. They must engage end users in ways that make them feel good about their choice of solution, as well as making it memorable for them to keep coming back for more. Complexity in an activity through software is no longer tolerated. It needs to be simple, beautiful, and accessible. As I spent time researching for the topic of this webinar, I enjoyed a TEDx talk by John Werner about augmented reality. In particular, I liked how he sees Moore's Law in effect not just for processors, but for the change in the way we control experiences. Already in our world of app dev, we've evolved from the typewriter and banging on keyboards to dragging and dropping in a canvas to represent actions. Many of you from the community have integrated voice assistants like Amazon's Alexa or Google Home. Our new native capabilities for mobile apps take advantage of the gestures you can control on mobile devices. And AI is making it possible to read and interpret what users are thinking to help speed up interactions with applications. We provide different ways to control these modalities through the capabilities in the platform. If you use Mendix, you've most likely experienced this capability building web and mobile applications. Now we're coming up with ways to expand experiences into new use cases and form factors as technology advances. Content is evolving as more technology finds itself in the devices we carry around in our daily lives. And the emergence of augmented reality portends a boom for digital twins and more efficient field service use cases. In addition, consider the educational use cases and the way we learn best as part of the way content has made lives easier. Multi-experiences are set to change the way we connect and consume content. Werner talks about another Moore's Law offshoot in the form of connectivity. The proliferation of wireless technology and advancements, not just in handsets, but in the communication infrastructure to serve content of greater density in shorter periods of time, is astounding. The emergence of 5G technology today, which is bound to reach maturity faster than anyone expects, will alter the way we consume content and the mechanisms by which we can control it. Rachel Sibley talks about AR, but in terms of how the technology enables us to get closer to doing, which helps us learn faster, and then generate new ideas from original ideas. Because the representation of an idea is something we can hold in our hand. This talk was great because Rachel really digs into the way we as humans learn best. She digs into some use cases where AR and VR already are prevalent and could tackle a number of problems. And she believes that AR, more than VR, is the way we will innovate the future and become smarter as a society. How does this fit into the world of applications? Well, I think it's pretty clear from the prior slides, application development outcomes, rather than the demand for different types of outcomes from the application development platforms we use, is changing. Many of us in the Mendix community have stepped out of the multi-channel experience layer and into implementing, or at least experimenting, with technologies that support multi-experience solutions. I like to think the emergence of multi-experience is a result of the API-first mentality developers have been bringing to their applications, frameworks, and libraries over the last handful of years. Accessibility to these services through APIs to do a something, whether that's fetching data, connecting to AI and ML, driving connectivity to IoT devices through event-based architecture, making chatty chatbots, or creating augmented reality applications, is the true enabler. The APIs are the enablers. They lower barriers to entry to so much technology capability. And as you know, the Mendix platform's ability to harness those external APIs and deliver an innovation ecosystem with a lighter lift for the entire developer spectrum is what makes it possible for us to keep pushing the envelope of what low code can do. Don't get me wrong, this takes a lot of effort to make possible. Looking back at Rachel Sibley's TEDx talk, she discusses the Wixification of AR. And for those that don't know, Wix is an abstracted no-code website builder. She talks about how building AR and VR applications today is hard, but just like it used to be hard to build websites, or as you may have experienced before Mendix, it was hard to build web and mobile applications, the tools will come around to make building AR applications easier. And like I said a minute ago, APIs remove barriers, and the meshing of different technologies to create these new experiences through abstractions is already having a profound impact on what can be accomplished. Before we get into the demo, I've danced around AR and VR pretty much a lot. I think it's important to provide you with some context, definitions, and introduce a third entrant, mixed reality, also known as MR. Simply put, augmented reality overlays data and information on the physical world. If you look at applications like Pokemon Go, IKEA's AR furniture app, and Wayfair's use of AR for designing your next best living space, are amazing consumer use cases that enrich the way people interact and experience life. Virtual reality replaces your entire worldview, providing an immersive opportunity for simulations or to take you to far-flung locales without you having to leave your living room. Rachel Sibley's TEDx video, again, has a great example of VR being used to assist firefighters with training in dangerous situations without having to create them in the real world. Mixed reality is a hybrid of the augmented and virtual worlds. It aims to place augmented reality objects into the physical world and have them hold their location relative to real-world objects. Today, the world of artificial realities is trending more toward augmented reality use cases and solutions because they offer tremendous value across a number of different use cases. Pokemon Go is super cool, but when it comes to Mendix, we're looking at AR as a way to enhance the work experience for field service engineers, doctors and medical staff who want to have access to data as they're applying patient care, rather than having to look at a chart of a desktop computer screen, and to help manufacturing design review reality against digital twins to shorten iteration and feedback cycles. Before I turn it over to Hedwig, I'll explain where our thought process is regarding this particular multi-experience technology. We are making investments in using Mendix and creating Mendix augmented reality with HoloLens. Because based on the current market landscape, we see value in AR and MR use cases, in particular with industrial and manufacturing use cases through Siemens. What we aim to do is provide visual modeling of AR, giving you one design system for all visual app types, whether it's web, native, mobile, augmented reality, all one place where you can build an application that can do all the things. We want to remain platform and framework neutral. But for today, we're focused on making HoloLens work because it's an adopted head-mounted display in industrial environments. What's nice is the HoloLens gives you that 3D positioning data that's crucial in enabling multitasking, that gives you that hands-free experience, especially in field service use cases. It just provides a major advantage. Okay, Hedvig, show us the cool stuff.
My share of this webinar will be explaining the HoloLens part of the multi-experience platforms. Since the HoloLens and augmented reality in general are such a new concept, I'm going to presume no prior knowledge except the typical mobile applications, such as Pokemon Go or the IKEA Place app. If you have not seen those, I'd recommend at least checking out the IKEA Place app for its AR capabilities, since it's quite a monumental app for AR and is often referenced as the AR app. We also presume you have seen the Mendix World AR demo. If you haven't, you can check it out at video.mendix.com. Now with that out of the way, we can look at the HoloLens as a device. The HoloLens is, depending on your definitions of these terms, either a mixed reality headset or an augmented reality headset. I'll be using the term augmented reality for the HoloLens in this webinar. First, we'll talk about the HoloLens 1. This is the device that came out in 2016. So it's an augmented reality device, and this means you can see virtual objects interacting with real-world objects. And these two worlds are mixed. You can also still see the people around you, making it more social than VR, where you're completely closed off from your real environment and just see the virtual one. This particular headset is also wireless, meaning that there is no external computer attached. It runs a modified version of Windows 10, so any application that runs using the universal Windows platform on your laptop should also work on the HoloLens, except that it's not that every application on your laptop runs using the universal Windows platform. We could go into that a little bit more, but that would be its own webinar. So right now we'll just focus on the HoloLens itself and the application that we made for it. While there's a lot more to it, to get a grasp on the HoloLens and how it works, I'd like to explain the three main parts of the HoloLens 1, which are spatial mapping and understanding, gestures for input, and location-based information. The HoloLens 1 was released a few years ago, but it still has extremely impressive sensors that allow it to do spatial mapping and understanding. What this means is that it has cameras, both normal and infrared, and a wide range of sensors that allow it to scan the environment. It can scan up to 3 meters away. With the combined information from all its sensors, it creates a spatial map, meaning the 3D model of the environment. This map is constantly updated, and more importantly, it remembers the details on this map. That allows it to remember a whole room, even if the objects in it are farther away than 3 meters. It just adds this to the spatial map and assumes nothing's changed in the distance. The HoloLens 1 can also understand this map it creates and make an educated guess of what parts of it are. This is mostly used for guessing chairs and tables. This is the spatial understanding part. Apart from that, it has gestures for input. What this means is that you use gestures to interact with the world around you instead of just using your hands to grab at stuff. You have a cursor in the middle of your vision and you make a pinching gesture to grab a virtual object. You can put these objects all around you, on the walls next to your monitor, and even have them follow you around. This can give you a kind of Minority Report effect, but it's unfortunately not at that level yet. The tracking of the HoloLens 1 is great, but right now the screen size you're looking through is quite small. It's like you have a window in front of you that you can look through, called your field of view. Inside of this window, the virtual objects are rendered, but they fall off once you're not looking almost directly at them. There are two ways that objects can appear in the HoloLens. They're either flat, 2D, or 3D. The applications that can also run on your laptop using the Universal Windows platform discussed earlier will appear as a 2D screen. As a programmer, these flat applications you have no control over where they're gonna appear. So the location is completely decided by the user. So if you would want to show instructions at a specific machine in your factory, you wouldn't do that with these 2D applications. This is where you'd want a 3D application. These 3D applications are completely immersive, so you can't multitask two 3D applications. You could see it as kind of a full screen application. Everything is still there in the background, but you can't access it while you're still in this 3D application. This is the kind of application we have made and that you saw at Mendix World. So while the screens in it were 2D, the application itself is a 3D application. Now with that all out of the way, let's look into the future of the HoloLens. The HoloLens 2 has been announced in February and should be coming any day now. I'd like to quickly go through this and what it means and how it's gotten better compared to the HoloLens 1 you just saw. Because thankfully, Microsoft listened to all their current customers and made a very promising new HoloLens. I've listed the important new or improved features. Like for example, the iris tracking instead of a cursor that's stuck in the middle of your screen, meaning you can use your eyes for interacting with virtual objects. Full hand tracking for the interactions, where with the HoloLens 1 you could only make gestures. This HoloLens allows you to interact a lot more naturally. So you can interact with virtual objects almost the same as real-world objects. ARM architecture instead of the 32-bit architecture they had before, meaning a lot has changed in the way applications are made for it. While you might get lucky, 99% of applications made for HoloLens 1 will have to be changed and ported again to HoloLens 2, which is also very telling of the stage that this type of augmented reality is in, since it's still finding its footing. Then the twice the field of view, meaning the window where you see virtual objects is twice the size, making everything a lot more immersive. There's a lot more that has changed, but these are more of the highlights. Something else to point out is that the HoloLens, this next HoloLens, will be a lot more comfortable than the HoloLens 1, which could really put a lot of pressure on your nose and forehead. The HoloLens 2 has more padding and has part of its computing in the back instead of having everything in the front, making for better weight distribution. Now into the Mendix specific part. We're still working on the private beta now, but it's still not too late to sign up for it if you have a good use case. What's in the private beta? Right now, the private beta is practically what you saw in the Mendix World demo. So the Mendix page is in 3D space, showing your current application page in the HoloLens, meaning that you only have to import a module to port it. Location based on markers, multi-page rendering, up to 5 pages rendering simultaneously, everything clickable, and there's of course included some how-to documentation. So now let's get into some use cases. What you see here are 3 different use cases: the maintenance engineer, architecture and design, and medical. And these are the 3 most common use cases. This is of course not what you have to do, but these have proved to be most effective in AR and for the HoloLens especially. So let's go through them one by one. At the top right, you have the maintenance engineer. And as you can see, he is fixing a motor of some kind. And he's using the HoloLens for the instructions. And because he's using the HoloLens, he has both his hands free to do the actual work, but he still has all the information he needs right there. So he doesn't need a big book telling him what to do, and that could get stained or anything. He just has the HoloLens on his head and is using that. You can also see there they use some kind of 3D model to make it extra clear on what he has to do. Then the architecture design use case you see at the bottom left. And here you can, the HoloLens would be nice because you can see the work you're doing immediately in the real world, so with some extra context to it. And you could also have multiple HoloLenses looking at the same thing, meaning that something you didn't notice, someone else can notice. Also, you could use it to do some light editing to the product while it's already there. And then there's the medical use case that's also cited a lot. And at the bottom right, you see a surgeon, and he's presumably doing some surgery. Whilst doing that, he of course can't really touch a touchscreen or hold an iPad. And he's using the HoloLens to, I think, ask something of his colleague and also look at some stats of the patient on his table. And in this case, it's great because he can keep his hands free to do the actual surgery. He doesn't touch anything else. You can still see it. The screen could also move with his face when he's looking somewhere else. Okay, now with all the general HoloLens stuff out of the way, let's look at what we did at Mendix World. So this is me and Danny giving the demo, and at the right you can see what the HoloLens was seeing. What we did for this demo was use the maintenance engineer use case. So in this case I was the maintenance engineer, and there was something wrong with these smart crates that had IoT sensors in them. We used the screens to show some graph data of the temperature and also 3D model that explained where this IoT sensor was. Now, let's just jump into it and see what happened behind the scenes. So, the behind the scenes, what are we actually seeing here? So you have some Mendix pages with the interaction. It's context aware, and are multiple of these screens at the same time. So they are both constantly checking and reloading and everything. You have the AR look and feel, which is attributed to the fact that and the HoloLens does this automatically, we filter out the black, so you only have an additive screen, which is what makes it see-through. So the actual pages just have a black background. Next we have marker detection. You don't see the markers right now because the screens are placed over them, as they should be, but there are markers underneath there that I could scan with the HoloLens, which would make these screens appear. These markers have an ID to them, so there's about 50, and depending on which marker I would scan, a different page would show up. So the crate that had something wrong with it showed this screen every time. Then there is the 3D positioning. So while right now we just chose to have the screens right on top of the markers, you could also place this somewhere else. The tracking of it is better when it's close to the marker, but you could place it like a meter away if you would want to. Then there is the 3D model that you see right next to it. This is right now still experimental, since we have not found a way to make this as streamlined as we would want it. And the spectator view, which is what makes this screenshot possible. The video for this demo was done through an iPhone application. And what this means is that while you're looking through an iPhone right now, the iPhone itself is not really doing anything more than just repeating what the HoloLens sees, but from a different perspective. This is kind of a difficult concept, but I'll try to explain it as clear as I can. The HoloLens is the one that's generating the screens and showing that to the users. Then we make a kind of screenshot of that, of each individual screen, and sending that with all the metadata to the iPhone. The iPhone does not have a connection to the Mendix server, but is simply repeating that screenshot on the place that the HoloLens told it should be. So this is not something you can actually use separate from the HoloLens. It's just made as an addition. So now let's just do a demo of how this all works in the real world. For this demo, we're just going to take a standard template and enable HoloLens capabilities on it. So just choose this one since it has a lot of stuff already in it. We'll call it webinar. Now this seems fine. Okay, so this is the app. As you can see, we already have a few pages with some stuff on there that we can use to show in the HoloLens. Now the next thing we need is a module, specifically the AR module. Yeah, seems fine. Okay, so now here we have the AR configuration module. You don't really need to be doing much in the module itself. It's mostly for enabling the configuration through a web page. So let's first see if this all runs. And start it up. Yep. There it is. Should be able to just see it now. Yeah, so here's the app. It's just the standard template. Now we can really start. So we'll need to make sure that the pages that we use have at least a URL to be able to go directly to them. So I'll just type that here, tasks. And we'll choose the assets page. I'll just keep it at 2 to keep it simple. Assets and tasks. So I should be able to just go to them. Yeah, there it is. So right now it's just we can go directly to this page, and that's necessary for the HoloLens. Because we're going to bind this URL to a marker in the AR configuration. Now to do that, we need to go to one of these pages, but this one is probably the best starting point, and you can find it at AR config. So let's just go there now. Oh, with the correct. There we are. Yeah, so what you can see here, it has a few categories. I don't know what to call them. So we have web view info, and that's about connecting the page to the configuration and the marker. Here we have the configuration. We'll just make one. It's more of a title than an object. It just means that we could have different configurations, like a debug one or a demo one or whatever you want. Here are the markers. Right now there are no markers, so we're going to generate those. And there you see it generated 51. This is what they look like. As you can see, they are not QR codes, but they look very similar. And then there's the screen settings, which we also need to set. But let's first start with the configuration. We'll just call it main. This is also where you would set the marker size. This is in meters. So right now it's 5 centimeters, that's fine. And the marker size is very important for the depth at which the screen will appear compared to the marker. So you could just put a random number there, but you should really try to make it as close to the real size of the marker as possible. So the real physical size of it. Then some screen settings. This comes pre-filled. This is also the settings we used at Mendix World. I'll just call this normal. I'm not great with the names, but this works. Yeah, so we've got that all set up. We have the configuration, the markers, and the screen settings. Now we can add some web views. This is a little configuring, but we call the first one tasks. So this will now point to tasks. This will set what kind of screen settings it has. So this will just be the normal ones. This is the marker ID. So this decides what marker is going to be pointing at this page. You can see as I click it here, the little preview will change. Marker offset. So this is if you don't want it directly at the marker. This is not centimeter precise, but it's, yeah. And then the tag along. I don't want to tag along. What this means is if the screen should follow you along as you walk, but I would rather have it at the same place. So let's save this. Looks fine. Add the second one. Still in the same configuration. Assets. Screen, same screen, marker. The next one. So we have 0 and 1. And I'll just leave this.
Volume.
Oh. Yeah. So what you see here is we have two markers, the ones 0 and 1. They are both the same size, 5 centimeters, that's fine. The path to the page, the configuration that they are attached to, and if they have tag along or not. Right now they don't. So this is really all you need in order to make your project work for the HoloLens. So now just let's take a look at what this will look like in the HoloLens. So now on to the next part of the demo, where we're going to see what the HoloLens sees. This part is going to be a little complicated with all the cameras we have right now. So first we're going to see what the HoloLens sees. So I'll just first start the video and put this on. Okay, so here we have the main menu, and let's just start the Mendix app. There it is. This is one of those flat apps. And here you have a very simple screen with the IP address already filled in. The typing on the HoloLens is a little complex because you have to tap each single letter. But yeah, we are already good to go. Let's just see if we can find the configuration. We can. So here you see the main configuration over there. So yeah, we can just start the app. Especially now that we're also recording this. So everything is gone now. That means it started the app. Here's the splash screen. And it started. So this is the point where I would start scanning. That means we have to stop the video recording on the HoloLens because it can't do both, which is why we made the iPhone app. So now we're gonna connect the iPhone to the HoloLens and start recording on there. But this is really the way you can best see everything that's going on. So I've started recording on here, have I? I have. It's now locating the floor. So everything, for this to work, everything needs to be on the same network. So we'll just connect now. I should see, yeah, there's the scanning. So now I have this marker on here that I showed to the HoloLens. And that's, this works in pretty much the same way that these little markers here work. So this is where the pages are going to appear when I scan these. And it does the same with this iPhone. So this iPhone uses its own AR capabilities to be able to show these web views, but it needs to be connected to the HoloLens so it agrees on which space is where, basically. Okay, so now that we have that done, and I'm recording on here, we have these markers that you can see. So 0, 1, 2, 3. And I can now scan this with the HoloLens. There they are. So yeah, here you see the 2 pages. You can see that the lettering is a little bit weird on these standard pages since it's black, and black is see-through. You can really see that here. I'll try to show you in multiple angles. But as you could see, the scanning was very quick. We had them right here. Everything that is in the configuration is also preloaded on the HoloLens. So if we have had any more pages, it would already start loading those. So when you scan the marker, it's there very quickly. Yeah, so this is basically what it is. I could also rescan a marker, say here, and have it appear again. There, pretty quick. So yeah, so it's just moved. I could also move it, but I would need 2 hands, and right now I'm holding the phone in my hand, so we're just not gonna do that. You can click these, so I can just click them. The change right now is very minimal, since these pages were not really made for this resolution right now. So you would need to take that in consideration when making the screens, but right now I figured for this small demo it's probably fine. Yeah, that's basically it. So what you just saw was me configuring the HoloLens part and just showing it right now, pretty quick. Okay, so how does it work? Right here you see more of an overview of what's going on. And this also shows the marker that we used. It's not a QR code, even though sometimes we call them that. These are more simple markers that make it easier to recognize and makes the loading a little bit faster. Yeah, so you have the marker at the left, then you have the HoloLens application in the middle, and the Mendix app on the right with the Mendix AR module, which you do need to make a normal Mendix application, HoloLens Mendix application. So the marker itself, of course, is just a piece of paper and does nothing, but it does tell the HoloLens what ID it is. So it could be 1 to about 50. And then the HoloLens app connects to the Mendix app, which has the information about which marker belongs to which page URL. And that's sent to the HoloLens, which then loads that page using a web view. So behind the scenes, all those screens are really Edge web views. Now you're thinking, why Edge? And that's because that's the only thing that will work on this version of the HoloLens. So there's no Chrome and no Firefox yet. Should be a version of Firefox in HoloLens too, and maybe that means we can use some other web views, but we don't know yet. So yes, there you have the web views on the HoloLens that are streaming these Mendix pages to a Unity-provided 3D environment. Now, what does that mean? Unity is the program we use to make the HoloLens app that can show any Mendix app. You could look into it yourself, what Unity is and does, but what you need to know is it's a game engine that is very smart with a 3D environment and has a lot of stuff already built into it. Yeah. Then the Mendix app. This could be pretty much any app that you would then load a Mendix AR module into. And while this should all work, there's of course some ifs and buts. So now that you know a little bit more about how it works, I think it's important to also kind of show what it can, but also what it can't do. So to start positive, what can it do? It can render multiple screens at once. So we've personally tested up to 5. You could do more, but they would get slower to update. You can click in these screens and they will respond the way you want to. If it renders in Edge on your laptop, there's a big chance it will render on the HoloLens, but of course it's hard to make any kind of guarantee. Now what it can do. Right now you can do stuff like access the HoloLens file system or the sensors or the cameras. This is something we would like to do, but it's not currently in there. So right now, how you could see it is more as a viewer application. So you can see your application as an AR application, but it's not fully integrated with the native HoloLens stuff. There's also no support for 3D objects right now. It's also on the roadmap. No drag actions or pop-ups or anything like that. It's really quite simple now, which we did on purpose. Now that we've talked about how it was made, how it works, what it can and can't do, I thought it might be fun to also include how it wasn't made and why. So we tried a few things. The ones listed here are the React Native for Windows, WebVR, WebXR, and DirectX UWP app with Sharp DX. We also tried some other stuff, but these were the more successful ones. Why we didn't choose these, we may in the future, but right now they weren't really working for us, is that the HoloLens is still very much changing. AR in general is still very much changing. So making a React Native for Windows port of it would be quite risky, since it may just change at any moment. And right now, the path we took with the web views is very flexible, since we can assume that web technology will always be included in the HoloLens. Then you might be thinking, well, there's also WebVR and WebXR. This means that you can do 3D, VR, and AR stuff in the web browser. Why not use this? This is because we haven't found a way to render multiple pages. So with WebVR or WebXR, you could just render one. And then again, it's also still in the transition from WebVR to WebXR, which you could also look into yourself. It would also be a complete webinar to explain this, but they're right now just in the process of moving everything over. So neither WebVR nor WebXR is stable at the moment, and that's not really something you would want to base your application on. And also directly making it in DirectX, which is you could see it as the Windows rendering pipeline, with Sharp DX, which makes it possible to make C# applications with it. This is also something we considered. However, there's quite a small number of developers working directly with it, and this is also what Unity bases its applications on. So we could go for the DirectX path, but it would just cost a lot more time and be a lot more hassle, basically, to accomplish that. So that's more of a really behind-the-scenes view of the choices we make and what we didn't make. So now to get back to the private beta. Right now, what's on the roadmap are multiple things. So the device capabilities I mentioned earlier, so take a picture, for example. 3D model support, something we already did show a little bit of, but is still not finished yet. Offline capabilities, AR and Mendix native mobile, but mostly the roadmap will be decided and is decided by feedback from private beta users and their use cases. So we're looking for customers with concrete use cases. And if you have any, please contact your CSM or partner manager or the AR product manager, Danny Roest. The email address you see on the screen right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Hedwig. Let's continue to the questions. Right now, we have one question from Rob. And that question is, does the HoloLens fit over a user's spectacles, or do you need good eyesight? So, I'll let Hedwig answer that one.
All right. From all the demos I've done with the HoloLens, about 70% of the time it will fit over your spectacles. It wasn't really designed to do that. It's just that the space in the HoloLens makes it possible. It really depends on how wide your glass frame is.
All right.
Basically.
So as we mentioned before, there is a private beta going on right now. So if you're interested and you have ideas for business cases, or maybe you've had questions from customers about if you can do this, let us know, and we can fill you in on the details in the private beta program. So we can really shape the future of HoloLens, AR, VR development within Mendix, and make it a better product for everyone, really. So we have a question coming in from Rico Robinson. What are some concrete use cases with the HoloLens? So a Mendix combination apart from medical or architecture or industrial. So I'll give Danny Roest the floor.
Hi Rico, thank you for your question. So this is Danny Roest. So we're looking at a couple of concrete use cases. One of the use cases is for training purposes. It's a bit similar as Jeff mentioned for training firemen people. This would be for people who need to inspect houses when there are damages, for example, for insurance use cases. So they need to train these people how to recognize damages, to check where you need to look for. And setting a car every time on fire is a bit expensive. So mimicking that or mimicking damages to houses could definitely help there. Some other use cases in manufacturing where people need to manually replace certain equipment. And when something goes wrong there, you can ruin a whole batch of products, for example. So there they can use the HoloLens, for example, to aid the mechanic or the employee to make sure that he gets the right products and puts it on the right place or the right parts. So these are some concrete use cases. We have also some ideas for warehouses where a lot of paper dossiers are stored to quickly look into the box what's in there. So basically when you walk through a physical warehouse, immediately see, okay, this is about these cases for these customers, these kinds of use cases.
Yeah, so I've also heard we mentioned firemen, for example, and I've also heard an application for military use, for example, where they put on the headsets and they train in reaction time and aiming and things like that without actually having to hold a live weapon and things like that. And it's quite scary how well you can imitate like a real live situation or scenario using that virtual world. They initially thought it because it's fake, it wouldn't have the same effect, but it actually does. And so I found that a really interesting case. So you don't have to go in the field and just like the firemen, you don't have to set anything on fire or use rounds or guns or equipment.
Yeah, I also know one of the first times when I played with, that was VR then, at that time, I was also with Hedwig and I needed to walk into a building and there was a stairs also going down. And it was really scary to do that step because your mind is really playing games with you. And it's really difficult to turn it off. And with AR, there also is some research that people behave quite similar in the real world, even if they know in AR it's fake. Mm-hmm. But if you, for example, you have two seats and you place somebody on one seat, people are less inclined to sit on that seat because there's already somebody sitting there. Even if it's just added, it's just an animation, but it does something.
Your mind really tricks you into thinking that it's real. So a question that just came in from Nicolaus. Would it be possible to use the tags to ID items in a warehouse, something you mentioned, or on a shop floor, and then show the detail pages for each of those items? It's similar to the way it was done for the Smart Crate demo, or does the limit of 50 tags interfere?
Okay, well, thank you for your question. I think this really depends on the exact use case. I mean, if 50 tags are enough for you, then sure, I don't see why you couldn't use them.
So is the 50 tags, is that a limitation of the HoloLens, or is it just a limitation of what we currently built in a Mendix app?
It's the limitation of the system we currently use. So the markers you saw in the video, they are very easy to recognize because they are quite, I would call it small in their resolution. Like they just have a few blocks, which make them very easy to scan and show the page for. But we could also look at maybe using QR codes that can hold a lot more information, but then you can expect the scanning to take a bit longer. So we're just seeing now what works best.
Yeah, so we're actively doing some research on QR code scanning there. And then, there's no fixed limit.
So the question here from Simon, you mentioned the HoloLens 2. What do you think will be the biggest feature? I already see you animating like, I know what this is.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about the HoloLens 2. To name one feature is not really possible since it's just all around a lot better. The field of view is getting twice as big, which is huge since that's the first thing people notice now. You put the thing on their head and they say, well, this is great, but the field of view, like the screen you're looking through, is very small, and I do notice it and feel like it takes away from the experience. So that's great. And then also the fact that you can use your whole hand is gonna make navigating so much easier because like you saw in the demo, every time you type, you have to look at a keyboard and aim the white dot in the middle of the screen to a letter and then make the gesture to click. If you could just use your hand, that would make it so much easier and give you a lot more possibilities for UX as well. It's and I could go on, but you know.
Yeah.
It's it's gonna be great.
And in terms of other functionality, like would it open up more possibilities for Mendix integration, Mendix experience?
Well, another thing is that they are gonna allow more stuff on there. So with the HoloLens 1, you had to have a UWP powered application, and I think they're gonna loosen that up a little bit as well and also allow some more things on there. So right now it's you have Edge to use as a web browser, and that's it. There are some more web browsers in the store, but I think those are just Edge web views on, repackaged as a new kind of browser.
Still the same thing.
Yeah, and it would be really great to have like Chrome or Firefox on there, because then you also have all those developers that can make stuff for it.
Yeah. So there's another question he comes in from Nicolaus. Do you know if the HoloLens 1 or 2 is compatible with safety helmets?
Well, thank you again for your question. I do know that. Both are compatible with safety helmets, meaning that the HoloLens 1 can be built into it. And with the HoloLens 2, they actually provide a way for you to take it apart safely and then put it on a safety helmet. There are already businesses working on this. I forget the name, maybe Trimble or something, but it's on the Microsoft website if you look for it.
Yeah. So we can think of a lot of use cases, but do you know of any company or example, maybe not specifically Mendix, where they are already using this? So are they already using this in, for example, construction or maintenance, mechanics, or something like that?
Let me think on that. There are a lot of demos and proof of concept type things. The reason for that is that the HoloLens is pretty revolutionary, meaning that nothing like this has ever been done, and that means that the way Microsoft built it, they also are gonna change more over the future, and they have a hard time committing to something right now. And to actually use the HoloLens right now in production, I'm sure there are companies that are doing this. I've seen some, especially in education, but to make a more a bigger commitment to it, like buy 400 of them and give them to your workers. That's just too risky right now.
Yeah.
That's why you see so many demos and proof of concepts.
Yeah.
And
Makes
not
sense.
that much of actual usage.
Yeah, if the technology is still constantly changing, no one's going to do a long-term commitment for.
I mean, yeah.
So we have another question here from Luciano. Thank you for your question. Nowadays, I can only use markers to identify the screen I will show. Is that right? And do you have at your roadmap identification by IoT, for example?
Currently not, but that's definitely something we're open at. We're also looking at better device integration with the HoloLens, so to leverage the device capabilities of the HoloLens. And next to that, we're also looking at native mobile to include AR. So that could also tie into IoT support. So if you have a concrete case there, let's connect and see what's possible there. As we already mentioned, the roadmap is also heavily dependent on input and feedback from customers based on the use cases.
Excellent. So beyond the HoloLens 2, what do you feel is the future of wearable tech? So we've been talking a lot about HoloLens, but there are obviously the types of devices that we use is broader than just HoloLens or VR set. Is there anything that you can think of?
It's of course a very early stage. So the most popular wearable now are the smartwatches. It's not that success as everybody expected so far. However, both Apple and Google are still pushing for it, creating new features, new watches. So time will tell. It will definitely be interesting to watch, but difficult to say for now because everybody expected way much more attention to it, but so far it's going pretty slow. But
I think it comes back to what we talked about earlier is that I think most companies are waiting to see, who comes out on top or what technology really takes a firm hold and becomes popular and becomes sort of the standard. And I think as soon as that happens, and I think it's going to happen soon. I mean, VR has been in development for more than 10 years now, and you really see that it's becoming more available, widespread for not just companies but also consumers. So I think as soon as a wearable tech is available to widespread to consumers, I think the demand for the applications and the integrations will skyrocket, definitely.
Yeah, and so not only, of course, B2C, but also B2E, B2B. But if it's cool, if it's useful, we'll definitely start supporting it.
Excellent. And with that, we'll round up the webinar. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've had a blast creating this webinar, and we hope you've enjoyed it. Yeah, and with that, hopefully see you next month in the next webinar. Thank you.